So UFC 284 is coming up this February and I'm really excited for it, and the reason why I'm going to talk about it so much on this channel is because I'm going to this card live. I live in New Zealand, so UFC 284, it is a couple of flights away. It's in Perth on the other side of Australia. It's on the west coast. I live from New Zealand. Actually, you can see it right here. Can you see it because of the thing? So I live in New Zealand here, and the event's on Perth over in the west. So that's where it's going to be, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to fly all the way over to Perth just to watch this fight, just before I start university next year. It's going to be really good, and I'm really looking forward to it. Obviously, at the top of the card, you've got Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Tough fight for Alexander Volkanovski, man. I mean, I respect what he's trying to do here, though. You know what I mean? I feel like he realizes that he's 34 years old, and if he's going to start really putting in some numbers and cementing himself as one of the best fighters ever, he has to start taking these risks. He has to move up a weight class, he has to fight the champion there, and he's fighting Islam Makhachev. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Makhachev is going to be able to beat Alexander Volkanovski, though. But I do really like what Alexander Volkanovski is doing here, and he's obviously trying to cement his legacy. He's obviously trying to build on his legacy. And this guy, you know, he's only fought 5 times in the last 3 years, but to be fair, he has fought twice in the last 6 months. So I think he's really going to try and start and get on a roll. I wouldn't mind seeing him defend the belt against whoever, but at the moment, it's a massive, like, who fights who situation at featherweight right now. We've got 3 top contenders. You've got Emmett, you've got Rodriguez, and now you've got, the man who just fought, Arnold Allen. So you got 3 guys that really could have a call for the title shot. I feel like one of those guys is going to fight Max Holloway, and then the other 2 are going to fight for an interim belt and then fight Volkanovski after this fight. So I'm pretty sure an interim belt is going to be on the line at some point, and I hope they sort that out soon. Or maybe even though they do an interim belt on this card, it would kind of make sense a little bit, you know, kind of scheduling, because if Volkanovski wins or loses, I guess like they can fight in like 4 months time, you know what I mean? So I mean, if Alexander Volkanovski gets beaten pretty bad, he probably will need 6 months off. But we move on. Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. The pick so far is Islam Makhachev to win the fight. I think Volkanovski could potentially have success in some ways, because he is, as he said, he's a very short guy, and he could potentially defend a couple of takedowns, but Brian Ortega was able to get him down. Even if he gets down, his shortness, I guess, could help him get back up, you know what I mean? So it could be interesting, but I think Alexander Volkanovski is just going to be undersized for Islam Makhachev, who's massive for 155. Robert Whittaker taking on Paulo Costa. I'm going to be going with Robert Whittaker here. I think he's the best middleweight in the world. I think that skill for skill, he's better than Israel Adesanya. I know people aren't really ready to hear that, but I genuinely do believe that Whittaker, just skill-wise and well-rounded mixed martial arts, whether or not they fight each other, is a more skilled fighter overall than Izzy. I think he's got better wrestling, he's got better grappling, and the striking is, believe it or not, I would say in MMA it's pretty even. If they fought in a kickboxing ring, it would be different, but I like Robert Whittaker to win this matchup, man. I think that he should be able to get it done. I'm going to pick by decision. He hasn't been finishing anyone recently, and he has been mixing up a lot of takedowns recently as well, which is not something that you ever saw really before he fought Israel Adesanya that first time. So he's really mixing up a lot of grappling here. Could be interesting against Costa, because Costa does have a pretty good ground game and really good takedown defense, but I think that on the feet it's going to be a fun fight, and I think that Whittaker's just going to be a little bit more skilled than Costa, but Costa's cool. It's going to be really interesting to see if he gets booed. He probably will by the Australian crowd, but Costa's kind of like one of those guys where you just can't dislike him because he's actually hilarious, like he's so funny. But yeah, I think Whittaker's going to win by decision. 93% on Tapology picking Whittaker. That's kind of crazy. And now we move on. Tyson Pedro taking on Mingyang Zhang. It's slated for the main card. It'd be interesting to see if it stays on the main card. Maybe they're not going to stack this card as much as I thought, which is a little bit disappointing. But Tyson Pedro versus Mingyang Zhang, it's a good card. It's a really interesting fight for Mingyang Zhang's debut. And here's a little stat for you guys that you may not know, but you're going to know. Tyson Pedro, right? So he's got 9 wins, yeah? All 9 of those wins are by finish inside the first round. And then you look at Mingyang Zhang. This guy's got 16 wins, yeah? All 16 of Mingyang Zhang's wins are by finish inside the first round. Every time that his fights have left the first round, he's lost. So maybe that's an interesting stat for you guys. I feel like this fight's going to end in the first round either way. I feel like Mingyang Zhang's been underappreciated a lot. I'm seeing people on Instagram say, oh my god, Pedro getting another nobody. Pedro going to win this one easily, which, you know, to be fair, I guess maybe they're giving Pedro a fight that's a lot more winnable You know, like, I feel like Pedro at this point in his career needs to get someone that's going to get him into the top 15. I don't know if Ming Yang Zhang's that guy. Like, he's making his UFC debut. But he did knock out George Tokos in the first round, and he knocked out George Tokos so badly. George Tokos, was still lying unconscious on the ground when the referee was raising Ming Yang Zhang's hand to say that he won. Like, it was messed up. It was a crazy finish. If you haven't seen it, you can see it on UFC Fight Pass. It's absolutely insane. I feel like Ming Yang Zhang's got really, really nice boxing, but you got to go Tyson Pedro. I think that he's actually going to look to maybe use the grappling in this one here. I genuinely do believe at some point Zhang is going to hurt Tyson Pedro. I mean, Ming Yang Zhang's not EK Villanueva. Ming Yang Zhang isn't Harry Hunsucker. You know what I mean? I think Tyson Pedro's going to get cracked by a nice right hand. He's going to be like, oh, alright, time to use my grappling base, which is kind of what he had. You know, like really good grappling when he was making his run in the UFC. So I'm going to go Pedro. I think KO is pretty likely, but I wouldn't be too surprised if he looks to use his grappling to kind of set up something. So maybe even a submission could be likely for Pedro. Now, Jack Jenkins taking on Don Chinese. I feel like Jack Jenkins really should win this one here. Don Chinese, I mean, I said it going into the Sadiq Yusuff fight, and all this guy really has is a first round of trying to knock you out. You know what I mean? And it's kind of what he tried to do against Sadiq Yusuff, but Sadiq Yusuff big brothered him. Sadiq Yusuff showed levels in like a way that we haven't really seen before. Like, Don Chinese just got destroyed by Sadiq Yusuff, and Sadiq Yusuff really showed that he's an elite talent, you know what I mean? And Don Chinese is maybe still developing a little bit. Jack Jenkins as well. This guy's really good. I thought he was going to destroy Freddie Elumiano Linares. Why can I not speak English today? And he destroyed him. You know, he beat him up for like 3 rounds, and then got ground and pound at the end. I feel like if he didn't get ground and pound at the end, he may not have actually been signed to the UFC. But before that, he has been pretty good competition on the regional scene. That Rod Costa win is very underrated. Rod Costa just recently beat a UFC level opponent in Sean Etchell recently as well, so that's pretty good win for Jack Jenkins. Maybe Rod Costa will be on this card even, you know. But yeah, Don Chinese, he's a good fighter. All he's got really is a first round. I think Jack Jenkins is going to nullify that first round by taking him down. And then I think from there, Jack Jenkins is going to use his kickboxing that he told Dana White that he's got. So I'm going to see Jack Jenkins win. I think it's going to be a decision or a late finish in this one here. And I think it should be like 30-27. You know, I feel like Jack Jenkins is really going to win this one. This next one's really interesting because I feel like I've overrated Justin Tafa throughout his whole career. How long have I had a YouTube channel for? A little bit over a year, about a year and a couple of months. Oh, actually, I might have had a YouTube channel when he fought Jared Vanderaa. And if I did, I picked Justin Tafa to win that fight, and I picked him to beat Harry Hunsucker as well. I've picked Justin Tafa throughout his whole career to win. I thought that he beat Carlos Felipe, by the way, guys. I genuinely do believe that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I've just got a weird read on Justin Tafa, but I kind of always just feel like this guy's going to win a fight and then he doesn't. But, I mean, should this be a winnable fight for Justin Tafa? Potentially. I mean, Parker Porter's getting up there in age. He's almost 38 years old at the point of the fight. You know, he lost to Jailton Almeida, but there really isn't much shame in that, in my opinion. He beat Alan Bardot, which... the guy that strikes like this. And he's also decent, who else? Chase Sherman and Josh Freese. These are the 3 lowest level fighters in the UFC roster. Alan Bardot's not even on the roster anymore. But I think Justin Tafa's going to knock him out. What are the picks? Yeah, I don't mind Porter maybe mixing it up and using some wrestling, but I just feel like Tafa's going to knock him out. It's in Australia, you know, and I feel like that might be a little bit of an advantage for Tafa. If Tafa's going to win the fight, it's going to be by KO. This guy's got heavy hands. He's an exciting fighter. He's a pretty good kickboxer as well. He was signed to the UFC like way too early in his career. He was only 3-0, and the UFC signed him. So I feel like maybe they did him a bit of a disservice there. Like, this guy really hadn't fought anyone. I know he's got a pretty crazy kickboxing background, and I know his brother, Junior Tafa, has also got a crazy kickboxing background and is doing cool things in the Australian scene too. So maybe he fights on this card, but. You know, he stepped up against Jorgen De Castro, who's 5-0 at the time, he's 3-0, and then he fought Juan Evans and knocked him out, which is pretty cool. In my opinion, he beat Carlos Felipe. Honestly, I do still feel that way about that fight. He lost to Jared Vandeira, which kind of sucks. Then he knocked out Harry Hunsucker with a head kick, by the way, which is a little bit rare for a 6 foot tall heavyweight. But yeah, I like Justin Tafa to win this fight by KO. I'm really excited for this whole card. So far, I'm picking all of the Australians except for Makhachev, but you know, they're not gonna do it like on purpose, but they're kind of gonna set up these fights. I feel like for the Australians to be almost favoured to win because it's their first card in a very long time in Australia. I feel like there's some really good fights to make. You got Jack Della Maddalena, who could be on this card. Taito Ivasa, if he beats Sergey Pavlovich quickly, could maybe make a quick return on this card. We've also got a few other big names that are just slipping my mind right now. These guys that could make their debut, you could put Dan Hooker on there, he's from New Zealand. You could put Brad Riddell on there, he's from New Zealand. We've just got lots of big cards, big fights that could happen on here, and there is a New Zealand fighter whose name just slips my mind. He's a welterweight, and I think he could get signed to the UFC as well. He's from New Zealand. He's got a 12-2 record. His name has slipped my mind, unfortunately, but I feel like maybe he could make his debut on this card. I feel like maybe Rod Costa could make his debut on this card. This guy's really good. He's got a bad record, but he's really good. He's on 7-4. But I feel like maybe if they wanted to sign a UFC caliber opponent that was Australian for the card, I feel like maybe this would be a good one. He's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and everyone that he's fought has been very good. You know, he beat Sean Etchell 7-3, a UFC level opponent in my opinion. 5-2, Michael Manu lost to Jack Jenkins, who's now in the UFC. 7-4, Justin Van Heerden, who's a good prospect himself. And before that, you know, we've just lost a couple of fights earlier on in his career, and that kind of just happens. This guy's got really good grappling. I feel like maybe Rod Costa could be a good signing. And there's another one whose name is also slipping my mind. His name's Steven something. Steve Etchell, I think. No, not Steve Etchell. Damn, his name is really slipping my mind. But he could be on there. He was actually meant to fight against someone. He was meant to fight against Clayton Carpenter. But yeah, I just rambled for the last few minutes of that video. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this card. This is going to be a good one. This is going to be a great card, man. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really looking forward to it. What are people saying? Pedro KO. This fight isn't getting enough credit. Pedro has fought 2 cans, but he's still very talented. Ming Yang Zhang is good. I agree. Layup fight for Jenkins, somewhat agree as well, to be fair. And yeah, I think KO for Tafa is pretty likely. So yeah, that's my picks, man. Let me know what you think.